がばりもうまじ恋 RTA 始まるよ
Hello everyone, today we will be unboxing another figurine for the week. Here we have is a figure from the manufacturer's Hakoiri Musume. Is a 1/6 scale PVC figure of the character Shizuri Ideura from the series NEET Kunoichi to Nazeka Dousei Hajimemashita, or I'm living with an Otaku NEET Kunoichi. As always, before we take the figurine out of its packaging, just in case you didn't know, NEET Kunoichi to Nazeka Dousei Hajimemashita, or I'm living with an Otaku NEET Kunoichi, was originally a self-published web manga published on X, Pixiv, and on Nico Nico Sega's number 9 in 2020 by the author Yakito Mato and illustrated art by KOTATSU, where KOTATSU also worked on other series or doujinshis like Mesogaki to Kokoro Kunoichi Shimai Sokouchi Wakarase Correction in 2024, Gyaru Neko Musume ga Uchi ni Sumetsuite Nazeka Mainichi 3P Zanmai ni Natte Shimau Hanashi in 2025, and Ososugita Isekai Tensei Jinrui o Horoboshita Mao desu kedo Yokattara Uchi de Hatarakimasen ka in 2018. Back to NEET Kunoichi later began serialization officially in Kadokawa's ASC Media Works and Denkai Comics in 2021. The series then got an anime adaptation by the same name, NEET Kunoichi, in 2025 by Studios Quad, consisting of 24 episodes. As you can see here, we have is Ideura Shizuri's box rotating in 360. So without holding you guys back, let's just take her out of the packaging and see how she looks. So here we have is Shizuri Ideura straight out of her packaging, and we can see here after opening it up, she doesn't really come with a lot of accessories, but we do see here that the figurine is actually well kept and well packaged with protective plastic protecting the figurine to prevent it from getting any scrapes or scratches on the figurine. We do see here they have is the two accessories that it does come with on the opposite end of the little plastic box. And you can see here at the bottom of the base is located at the bottom. So with that being said, there's nothing really much else to show you, so let's just remove all of this and see how the figurine looks up close. So here we have is the figurine's base, and just like we do with every other figurine, here at the bottom of the base we see here is actually no text at all, and it's just a plain, you know, color of the base, besides this little protrusion here at the bottom, so it doesn't really indent, so it kind of keeps it like leveled at the bottom. But I did want to mention that the text is actually located on the side rim of the base. So here we have is a closer look at it. We see here we have is the name of the authors for the series and the title of the series. But besides that, it's just like we see on some figurines where the text is on the side rather than having it at the bottom. So you do see here the rest of the rim around it is kind of just similar what we saw at the bottom of the base. But we do see here on the top portion of the base there's a bit of texture around it, so from this angle you can kind of see it's not necessarily flat, but it is textured here on the top, where you do see here is, I don't know if this is supposed to be the room or the apartment that they're in with the wooden flooring, or maybe it's supposed to be when she's in her village. with before no, I'm assuming this is going to be the apartment. So this is the floor of the apartment, and it actually looks really detailed. They did a pretty nice job with sculpting this wood here. It looks actually really painted quite well. It looks really detailed, so that's really appreciated. You do see the extra lines around it to have like the separate pieces of wood that connect for the floor, which is actually really detailed, which is a nice touch for the figurine's base rather than having just a plain black or a plain white base. So I do really like this. So nothing really much else to show, so let's set this down and take a closer look at the figurine. Here we have is Shizuri Ideura's figurine, and I did want to mention that she is actually on her knees, so it's going to be a little bit awkward to show you guys like up close, but I'm going to do my best. So like we do with every other figurine, we're going to be starting to look at the figurine closer here, starting from her foot area, and we do see here the texture work on the foot looks, you know, semi decent, but I think the paint job on the figurine is what gives the sculpt a lot more pop to it, I should say. Where you do see here the darker portions are where you could say the latex suit of her kunoichi outfit is kind of pressed up against her, so the lighter portion of it is like, no, the lighter portion is where it's pressed up, and it gives it a lot more detail where we're almost seeing her bare skin, while the more darker shaded areas are where it's not necessarily pressed up but kind of lightly on her. She does have this little shin I don't know what you call that, but like fabric around her shin area where it's kind of like this white fluffy feel, which I think the sculptor looks really nice on it. Here we do see the creases by her bend of her knee area, and again you do see the same paint job around where you see the darker portions are in some areas, where the more lighter pink is where you can kind of see her, you could say her kind of her flesh because it's kind of tight on her. Where the top portion of it you see is her little exterior end kind of popped out, where you do see the middle portion of her latex outfit is kind of pressed up against her, so you get a little bit of creases around her backside there, which is a pretty nice touch. Similar portion here on her left leg, where we do see is a little bit lighter pink, more so in some areas where it's more darker pink. The same shin little portion where you see the fabric looks really nicely sculpted. It kind of feels like really puffy. Here on this foot you can kind of see what I was talking about, where you see somewhat of the toes, but I think the paint kind of makes it seem like there's toes sculpted in there, but it's not too like sculpted on, I should say. Where you see one foot is actually straighter than the other, while this one here is actually a little bit more bent. Going to the top portion, the paintwork looks really nice. I think the pink looks really nicely painted around the area. And here's the bottom sculpt where you see a little bit of creases where it kind of like gets snugged in there. My camera doesn't necessarily capture it, but you could see they actually sculpted a line underneath there. I think with this angle you can kind of see what I'm talking about, so they kind of give it a little bit more of an accurate female anatomy, I should say, which looks very detailed. You can see there, so obviously this has to be a little bit YouTube safe, so but you do see a little bit of a crease there, which is a little bit interesting, but a little bit more, as I said, female anatomy accurate. Taking a closer look here on the top portion of her waist, we do see a little bit of the pattern of her outfit here at the bottom. But because she is wearing this sweater, you don't necessarily see the entire thing. And I'm not really certain if they sculpted the bottom of it because the sweater's really tight on there. So I'm going to assume that maybe the outfit like stops midway and they glued the hip portion, so it's kind of a separate piece. The top and the bottom torso are two separate pieces that are glued on. But here's a closer look on her right arm, or should I say left arm. And we do see here they actually, did a pretty nice job here making this little grip area where it's gripping onto the sweater, which kind of gives it like a feel like she's zippering up the sweater onto herself, but because she has these large breasts, it kind of like stops her from zippering it up real quick. Where you see her other palm is holding onto a little zipper there. and the creases around it looks really detailed. Here going around her sweater, because she does have this long hair, it's a little bit hard to see, but we do see similar crease lines around her back sweater, which looks really nice. I think they really captured the sweater that she usually wears when she's kind of relaxing in the apartment of one of the other characters, or the main character. And yeah, you can see here the crease lines look really nice. A lot of detail, looks really great. Here on the other portion of it, where you see this hand or this right arm is actually rested a little bit more up because it's holding onto the zipper, just like we saw earlier, where you see the zipper is a little bit hard to notice, but when you look at the top portion here on the bottom of her bosom area, you do see here she's holding onto a little zipper while the other arm's holding onto the sweater. So you kind of have this little zip motion. And the top portion we do see is her breast being caught here on the sweater, where the paintwork looks really nice. You can kind of see they kind of made it a little bit lighter on the top portion, where you can kind of see a little bit of her skin. And I'm not certain if you can see areolas around her nipple area, but we do see here the protrusion of her nipples kind of being a little bit sticking up, almost as she's looking at her partner or the main male character in a suggestive pose. But here's a closer look on her face, which I think they did a pretty nice job giving her this little bit of an embarrassed expression. And here's her side profile, where we do notice that her glasses don't really have lenses on, but I don't really think that really, messes up the figurine. Here's her other side profile. I think it kind of makes it a little bit more clear view of her eyes on the inside. If she had lenses, I think that kind of obscured her eyes, but her detail on her eyes looks really nice. And I did notice that she does have this little bow here on one of her hair, which is kind of cute. But going back to her character's face, I think they did a pretty nice job. She does have eyebrows underneath, which are actually the color pink, matching with her hair, rather than having it black like we see sometimes in the anime where she has black eyebrows. But it actually looks really nicely sculpted. I really love her way they painted her eyes. They look really nice. And her mouth is quite in this little embarrassing face, which is pretty cute. And the top portion of her front bangs are actually really detailed. You can see all these lines they added around the hair, which gives it a lot more of that hair look, like we've seen on other figurines where they give you like these strands of hair, but then it kind of cuts off halfway. Here they gave you all these lines here, which gives it a really high quality feel. Going around it, we do see here the hair droops all the way down, all the individual strands kind of outspreaded. You can see all, like I said, going all the way up to the top portion of her head, where you see all these lines. So the hair is flexible, but I would advise don't really do this. I'm only showing you guys that you could flex it, so you don't really need to worry too much about the hair. But we can see here going up to the side of the head, we do see all these lines still continuing on all the way to the top portion of her head, which is really detailed compared to some other figurines that we've seen that kind of end off midway and it's kind of just a flat top. But here, all this line gives it a lot of detail. And this little cowlick on the top portion of her head, which actually feels like the most fragile piece of the figurine. So I would advise be really careful with her little cowlick on the top portion of it to prevent breaking it. But with that being said, that's really the entirety of the figurine. There's nothing really too bad about it. I think it looks really cute and looks really nice of a figurine sculpt. So I'm going to save my full opinion on it till the end of the video, but from what I'm seeing here, it's actually a pretty nice figurine. But there's not really too much else to show you, so let's just place this down on her base. So let's continue on to show the rest of her accessories. So here we have is these two little straps that I kind of forgot. I think this is where she keeps her like little ninja stars, I think. But these are what she's actually wearing on the side of her thighs if you've seen the series. And I think because she's kind of wrapping herself up with her sweater, I think this is kind of like her mid-transformation. Like she's throwing that to the side and zippering up her sweater so she can relax. But honestly, the little straps here are kind of flexible, so I don't really think you need to worry too much about bending this portion. And I think the paint looks really okay. I think the brown looks really nice. You can kind of see it goes a little bit darker in some areas, but I think overall it's still kind of simplistic, so there's not really too much to show you with this. But we do see here both of the little fabric, little straps are actually going in different directions. So these don't really have a plug-in, so you can place them wherever you want on the figurine's base. So let's just place these down. Alright guys, so that was Hakoiri Musume 1/6 scale PVC figure of the character Ideura Shizuri from the series NEET Kunoichi to Nazeka Dousei Hajimemashita, or I'm living with an Otaku NEET Kunoichi. All in all, I gotta say, it's actually a really cute figurine. The pose is quite, interesting, and I think all the detail work around the figurine looks really well sculpted. I think the paint kind of brings out the figurine a little bit more than when it's usually not painted. Well, we don't really see it not painted because we usually buy it when it's painted, but it actually looks really detailed. I love the hair, which is a plus because it's kind of sculpted all around, rather than some figurines where we see only the ends of the hairs are sculpted and the rest of it is quite flat. I really love the little cowlick on the top portion of it. Again, that is quite fragile, so I would advise be extremely careful with the top portion of her head. And overall, it's a little bit simplistic, especially her outfit being latex in her kunoichi form. And I think the sweater that she does wear kind of brings out a little bit more of the figurine. I forgot to also tell you guys the top portion of her bosom area kind of has her little collarbone. I forgot to mention that before, but she does have that on the front portion of it. But again, nothing really too much else to tell you guys. So with that being said, that's going to be the end of this one, guys. If you have not actually checked out the series, it is an episodic thing, so there is 2 episodes in one. So there's kind of like 24 episodes, but there's still a little bit more than that because it's 2 in 1. It's an interesting series. If you are interested in watching like a little bit of a comedy romance involving ninjas, I'd recommend it, but it's a little bit of a mixed recommendation. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be the end of this one. I don't want to keep holding you guys back for too long, so I'm gonna leave you guys off with the figurine rotating in 360 and other close-up shots of the figurine. So as always support the original creators for said series of figurines that we unbox. Thank you guys for coming to the channel and supporting it. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. 働いたら